Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. In the last time we started off the game and now we're heading into stage 4, and it was surprisingly hard to do that intro without saying the word Castlevania instead of Bloodstained, I'm not gonna lie. Stage 4, I'd say, despite it being the first stage where we have all 4 characters, by the way, this is Gebel, who, as I mentioned in the last part, his main ability is basically Alucard's 3 bat firing from Castlevania 3. You fire 3 bats in the quarter circle to the front and above you. This is surprisingly good as well for the same reason as Miriam's Triple Dagger, because each bat does count as a separate hit, even if you just stack them all on top of someone. The big thing with him, though, is that he's very good at getting across long distances, because his only sub-weapon is his bat transformation, which you can just press Y and then move around with. Notable, just flying with the bat, like with Alucard, does take hearts, but using the boost forward or even the faster ascension does take more weapon ammo. So make sure that you're watching your count carefully, otherwise you're just going to fall into a pit and lose Gebel until the next game over. Or beating the stage, whichever one happens first. Now, the reason I call this the hardest stage so far, beyond the usual difficulty curve, is that because you have access to every character now, you could very well find yourself on an easy pathway, yes, but if you... actually, no, I shouldn't say difficult now that I think about it. I should probably say punishing, because you really learn what it's like to lose the ability to take a shortcut. And let me tell you, for someone who likes to go fast in these kind of games, within reason, not single frame tricks, I'm looking at you, Castlevania 1 speedrunning, it just hurts to not to lose that ability, because I like being able to reverse fast. With that said, with Gebel, we now have the ability to basically attack anything directly above us without the need of sub-weapons, meaning that getting around and conserving ammo is going to be even easier throughout. By the way, that fire golem there, you need to use Alfred's Frost Caliber sub-weapon to take it out, but we won't see that for a while yet because I am very stubborn about using that one until the second playthrough at least. Technically third for the purposes of this LP, but we'll go over what that means later. So, gee, I heard you like that screen, and that's in almost every Castlevania game past 3 where they drop Fleeman on you. That screen is easier than any of those Fleeman screens, though, just because the frogs are a little more predictable. Yeah, they have different jump lengths and heights, but because they make a sound whenever they're about to jump, it's much easier to predict and counterattack. At least in my experience. Going this direction saves about 2 minutes, I think, depending on how fast you take the other screens or what other shortcuts you take, because there's like 3 nested shortcuts in that area alone. Another reason I'd say this is probably the hardest stage thus far is that it arguably has the hardest main boss in the game, barring, of course, the final boss. But that mostly just comes down to a few factors about it we'll be talking about in a few moments. With that said, though, we are coming up on the upgrade for this particular stage. To get it, you either need Miriam or Gebel, so hopefully you have either of them. If you have a Miriam, you can just jump up to the right and then slide under. Or you can use Gebel to fly up from the left. Notable, though, Gebel is also fairly useful in another way, in that in the case Miriam is dead, you can use his bat transformation to be able to traverse any of these single tile pathways that Miriam can slide through. There's a couple times in practice where that really came into play. Not so much, I believe, during the main LP, but during the, I think, 3rd playthrough for this particular LP. I think that happens a bit more often. Either way, we're coming up on the boss fight. This is a fight where you really do want to have the fire wheel for Alfred in case you want to use him, just because that invincibility prevents one of the attacks for this boss to be completely neutered. But we'll talk about that more when it becomes relevant, because it's time to introduce our boss. This is Valac, or Valac, however B-A-L-A-C is pronounced. We got 2 targets off the bat, each dragon head. Each one of them has a fire breath attack that they charge up and then immediately fire at you. And that's the attack that's very good with Alfred's fire wheel because you can just outright avoid it. Both heads can try to bite you, but the big thing is the bottom one tends to use the fire more often, while the top fires out these gigantic, I guess, pustule attacks that slowly float towards you, and if you attack them, they glow pink and then explode, causing a pretty wide radius of explosion damage. Once both heads are taken out, the fight isn't done yet, though. Instead of having a standard desperation attack, Valac has an outright third phase, where both heads are going to fuse into one gigantic head and try to kill you as much as they can, while also using the now multiple mouths on their body. The one attack this phase has, phase, not face, although I guess either is appropriate, is a gigantic fire beam which you need to jump to the right and then stand under. However, you need to immediately jump afterwards, because otherwise you're going to get hit by the body when it does this little loop. Not too much HP here, and if you have any weapon ammunition, I actually recommend saving it for this phase with Miriam, because it allows you to get some extra hits every here and there with either the scythe or the triple dagger. But that's Valac. No actual desperation attack to keep in mind here. Just take it out and you're done. On this playthrough, that's not too bad of a boss fight, I admit. But when it comes to what we're going to be doing later on in the game, that fight sucks. To put it bluntly. But now we're moving on to Stage 5. One of my favorite stages in the game, if not my favorite, honestly, because I just really like this aesthetic. I'm a sucker for boat levels. I can't lie about that. Whenever there's a boat level, it's usually one of my favorites in any given game. That's the Frost Caliber weapon for Alfred, by the way. Shoots a giant frost spear forward, which does damage. It also freezes an enemy, and in that case, a couple things can happen. Either you can jump on them to use as platforms, you can outright attack them to kill them instantly. Actually, that's it. There's only two things. Arguably, that's better for stages than the Ring of Fire, just because it allows you to make more platforms in the case there's very sparse ones in a room. But first off, I think only enemies of certain sizes can be turned into platforms. But also, I just prefer to save my ammunition for other things. Plus, I'm of the mindset that invulnerability is better than better mobility in this case. Because in this game, any mobility problems or things you would need are, at this point, covered pretty much by Gebel and Miriam in tandem. If one of them's gone until the next game over, that's one thing. But for now, with how I play the game on the normal mode, there's not much fear for that. I don't tend to outright lose a character in this game until, barring maybe a potentially misjudged jump or a Medusa head-like enemy knocking me into a pit. Stage 6, I want to say, is where I start losing characters in my normal playthroughs of this. The only real instance in this stage that I tend to lose characters, barring misjudged jumps from my memory, though, is this next room. We got one of the game's few actual mini-bosses here. This is the Poltergeist. This thing only has technically two attacks counting touch damage. And that's after doing a few waves back and forth. It'll stay on one side and then do kind of a U motion across the bottom of the screen. If it touches you while it does that attack, you're dead. It's instant kill. It traps whoever it was who got grabbed in the painting. So, don't let that happen. Triple Dagger or Gebel are very good for that. I guess, even though it's probably the worst option out of the three of those, Zangetsu's Chain Whip Subweapon can also be fairly useful for that. I hate these enemies, by the way. The pink ones not so much, because once they start jumping, they're pretty easy to take out. It's the purple ones that are extraordinarily annoying, because I find their projectiles very annoying, unless I have the Ring of Fire. At least during the normal playthrough. Again, second and third playthroughs are a bit different with how things get handled like that, because you have either more or less to deal with. More on that. Actually, in how many parts? I think 3? Gee, I wonder where the upgrade for the stage is. From my knowledge, though, you can only get this in one of two ways. If you have Gebel and you just turn to a bat, or if you use the Frost Caliber on this Bone Dragon here to make a bit of a semi-staircase kind of thing. Now, something that isn't immediately obvious unless you're playing the game here at this point is that, well, actually, no, you can see it right there. There's a wind right now pushing me slowly to the right. So my jumps to the left are hindered, but the jumps to the right are excelled. Mind you, I can just say, screw you, I have a bad transformation and skip this entire screen of platforming. Now, one thing I'm hoping YouTube doesn't do at this point is neuter the bitrate here due to the rain, a la the waterfall background in Bubble Man stage in Mega Man 2, because that is a lot of pixels going a lot of places very quickly. If it does and it's shitting the bed, yeah, sorry, there's not much I can do about that. I hear it's overall better than it used to be, but still. Either way, then we had our first Green Lantern, which drops an Alfred exclusive sub-weapon, the Thunder Spell. You're about to see just how absurd this is against this boss fight, Andre Alphas. The lightning you can press up to 3 times to cause 3 homing projectiles a la Dr. Wily's Bullets of Doom from Mega Man 7, and just do a lot of damage very quickly. You can see why this is broken. The boss, though, tends to have a lot of very fast attacks. It can do a couple of waves across the screen like that, before eventually dropping down lightning rods on the boat, in which case it's going to try and charge into you, and right before you, it stops and does a gigantic wave of energy across the screen. Also, for this, you want to jump over him or not fail with it. That's actually the very wave attack there. And then stand next to the lightning because, as you can tell, the middle of the screen is not very safe there. I really like that boss fight. If you don't have Gebel, the lightning ability, or Miriam, it's kind of annoying because Zangetsu has a pretty hard time reaching it. But otherwise, pretty good. And at this point, we are at the castle that has been in the backgrounds for most of the stages at this point. I don't think this castle has a name, but mind you, it could, and I just haven't played Ritual of the Night yet, which I really should because I've heard a lot of good things. Mind you, it's like Iga knows what he's doing with these kind of games at this point. Probably my least favorite stage theme in the game, though, I'm not gonna lie. This stage is probably one of the more interesting ones, depending on your choice of subweapon for Alfred. Because later on in this stage, there's going to be a lot of lava you can freeze with him, and his Frost Caliber ability to completely change the route, I think, twice? Although I think some of those are nested shortcuts. And here we have a new upgrade that you can either get by platforming or sliding. This is the Gauntlet. That increases the damage of your physical attacks by 1 point. Sort of, mentally at least. It definitely makes your attack strong. You'll be able to see just based off this golem fight. It's going to take 4 shots instead of the usual 5, I believe. But it just doesn't feel like it increases it in like an extraordinarily notable margin. I guess it comes more into play depending on your playstyle, of course. And also, I guess, mindset, now that I think about it, because in Castlevania-likes, or I guess action platformers like this in general, like Ninja Gaiden, unless there's a health bar for an enemy on screen, I generally don't keep in mind how many shots an enemy takes. I just shoot it till it's dead, basically. The only real exception to that is Mega Man, just because... I mean, come on, I'm a Mega Man dude. Of course I'm gonna kind of remember some of that part. Mind you, that doesn't mean I can look at any given enemy in, like, Mega Man 3 through... Actually, no, basically any Mega Man game tell you how many shots it takes exactly or how much health it has. But I'll be able to remember at mid-stage, especially after taking out the first one, because I'll be keeping that kind of count going in my head. This stage has one of the more annoying enemies in the game, though. These weird little cat things, mutants, I don't know what they're called. That thing right there. Because they like to just jump all over in your business, and it gets real annoying depending on where you are in the stage. This is an area I meant earlier by if you have the Frost Caliber sub-weapon, you can freeze the lava and attack it to just make an entirely new route for you. I'm not doing that because I want to keep the lightning with me as long as I can, but it's there if you need it. Also, the lightning sub-weapon is a bit odd in this game. You first encounter it in Stage 5, I believe, no matter what. But it is in every stage. If you even look at, like, maps, because I know there's a set of maps out there for this game that someone did, like, through pushing together a lot of screen caps and such. I even used some of them for reference in this very LP. There is one lamp that is green. But I think the green lamps don't start spawning until either you have Alfred or you have all 4 characters. I'm not sure which of those is the exact trigger. Frankly, it probably doesn't matter too much either way, but it is worth noting all of the same. I'm always extraordinarily careful in rooms like that because it reminds me too much of the final boss of Dracula X. God, I love Rondo of Blood. Its Super Nintendo port is not awful, but oh, it's rough. It's rough. These enemies are particularly annoying because they go in for a jump attack where they slam down on the ground with you. If you can knock them down before they do their attack, with like maybe Miriam's triple dagger for instance, they do get stunned on the ground for a bit longer, leaving them open for the killing blow. But if you're slow on the uptake, those enemies can rough you up pretty quickly. Also, I didn't bring it up last part, but the bat enemies in this game make me laugh because they remind me a lot of the boss bat in the first stage of the original Castlevania. Just in terms of the concept, plus you're expecting just this kind of cutesy little, hi, I'm a normal bat enemy, but no, you get basically Golbat. You're supposed to use the Ring of Fire here, but Gebel has another way through that. I'm not sure if they intended for you to be able to do that, but I'll certainly take it. These enemies are weird in that their hitboxes are a bit deceiving. Once their charge attack, as long as you're jumping above them, you're not going to get hit by it, despite the animation of the little swish that the scissors have, looking like it should be able to hit you. We got enemies that can throw their weapons high and low, enemies that go across the screen in a wavy pattern, in a mid-game stage with a lot of candles in it. You know, Iga, we know you did Castlevania, you don't need to reference the first game this hard. Well, am I gonna fight death in here now? No, the boss of this stage is a reference to something else entirely. Y'all know the legend of Elizabeth Bathory? Because we got that here. This is Bloodless. She's gonna spend the entire fight on the top of the screen. She fires down these homing missiles of sorts that just kind of stand there. Her main thing is the umbrellas. With a lot of characters, you can only attack her from the second or third umbrella, so you need to be careful about where you place yourself. She can also drop a giant ball that makes spikes go across the floor, and even cause blood rain to happen where you need to stand beneath one of the umbrellas. But otherwise, that's about it. The desperation attack, I'm actually not entirely sure how to avoid. I think you need to stand towards an extreme and then attack the head on top of the third umbrella. But I'm not sure how to dodge the tornado. I've never learned that. I've heard some people say you can just stand at either extreme and you're fine. But I don't know about that. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. And in part 3, we're heading into stage 6. See you guys then.